Bro, please, bro. Why are you do?
It's alright. Nothing's wrong. There's no way I'm gonna leave you in real life. I mean, my phone alerts me if you're more than 30 feet away from me.
Welcome back to Indie FPS You Need to Play, Episode 3, the series where I hope to introduce you to some of the best indie games out there. And what a year it's going to be for FPS titles. Whether you're into the more fast-paced, balls-to-the-wall boomer shooters or the more narrative-driven immersive sims, 2023 is shaping up to be one of the best years for gaming. There are so many I'm excited for, and I can't wait to show you guys all of them. So if you enjoy videos like these, please leave a like, it really does help me out a lot, and make sure to subscribe for more content exactly like this. Today's list consists of 5 games with one honourable mention, which isn't exactly an FPS game, but I'm including it anyway because I guarantee you haven't played a game like it before. Starting off today's episode, we've got a very highly anticipated game called Trepang 2. Now, to be honest, I somehow didn't hear about this game up until like late last year, but I'm so glad I did because this is shaping up to be one of the best FPS games, and all I've done is play the demo that's currently available on Steam. Trepang 2 throws you into an action-packed thrill ride after a mysterious group breaks you out of a heavily guarded black site. Your memories are gone, but your combat abilities are enhanced far beyond human limits. Wielding the power to slow down time and go invisible, you can rip and tear your way through the relentless enemies as they desperately try to take you down. The combat in this game is very reminiscent of the original Fear, but with a more modern feel in the form of the overall polish of the controls and the way the combat flows so effortlessly in the perfectly constructed levels that really complement the mechanical abilities you're able to perform. And what I really love about this game is its way of balancing the combat in such an intelligent sense that even though you're this superhuman that slaughters everyone in your path, it's still a system that you need to perfect and work for. The superhuman fantasy isn't just handed to you, you need to pay attention to your ability gauges, your ammo count, what weapons enemies are using, where they're gonna come from. You can't abuse your slow motion mechanic, you need to manage your stamina, you need to know when to use your stealth ability, and positioning is key in a game like this, otherwise you'll find yourself getting overwhelmed, and I found it to interrupt the flow of combat a little bit. Even in the demo, your arsenal is massive, or rather your potential arsenal is massive, I should say, seeing as you can only hold a primary and secondary weapon at the moment, but you can juggle and swap out weapons on the fly when the enemies drop them by quickly pressing your interact key. This mechanic alone is something I live for. It's fast, it requires wit and skill, and it's one of the reasons I fell in love with a game called Severed Steel. There is nothing more satisfying than sliding in slow motion and blasting someone in the face with a shotty than grabbing his weapon all in one clean flyby. Your arsenal can consist of shotguns, assault rifles, grenades, DMRs, SMGs, and my personal favourite, pistols. I don't know why I'm so attracted to handguns, especially in a game where it's encouraged to use every weapon available to you, quite often dual wielding them as well, but there is something so satisfying about speeding around with just my suppressed Glock headshotting everyone. Trepang 2 gives you all the tools you need in order to have an adrenaline-fueled, non-stop slaughterfest, and it's definitely a game you should keep your eye on. With engaging combat, gorgeous graphics, buttery smooth mechanics, brilliant level design, and a narrative to tie it all together, Trepang 2 is already a contender for my game of the year. So head on over to Steam and play the demo because I can't do it justice simply by talking about it. Coming up next, we have a survival game built in Unreal Engine 5 called DERELICTS, and this is obviously very inspired by games like The Forest and Green Hell, but it's looking to be forming its own identity and having its own unique feel to it. Set in a post-apocalyptic world, you and your friends crash land on Earth in a space shuttle to investigate the source of deadly radiation that had polluted the Earth, forcing most of the privileged part of mankind to flee to distant planets. Now, just like most survival games, you'll need to do common things in order to survive, like chopping down trees, finding metals, and gathering resources to defend yourself from the hostile, mutated wildlife that seems to be very unique and abundant in terms of the different types you'll come across. You can forge complex mechanical structures such as water wheels, wind turbines, and solar panels by utilizing the wind, sun, and water to generate electricity and power up your base. But you also need to brace yourself for the harsh weather changes that can bring in violent weather that can freeze rivers, which will in effect stop your turbines and other machinery. In Derelicts, you and your friends must explore the harsh environment to find new recipes to make new tools, weapons, and to find new parts that will allow you to progress further in the story, as well as just improve your overall living quality. Right now there isn't a demo or anything available, so I can't speak too much more about it, but it's definitely a game I'll be checking out with a few friends when it releases. You can head on over to Steam right now and wishlist it so you can keep your eye on it. You know when you were a kid or an early teenager and you were playing games like MX Unleashed and Tony Hawk, did you ever think to yourself, you know what this game needs? Fucking guns and monsters. No? Well, this dev said fuck you and made it anyway. Introducing MOTORDOOM. MOTORDOOM is the type of game that you didn't know you needed until you played it. Its gory and most importantly stupidly fun take on the roguelike genre makes for an incredibly unique experience that keeps you engaged the whole time. If you're familiar with how the old Tony Hawk games used to play, then you'll be more than comfortable with the controls in MOTORDOOM, and stringing together combos will be no problem at all. Which is important because the whole game is essentially based around that whole system by rewarding you with points that give you access to random perk cards once this bar is filled each time, as well as being the only way you can refill your ammo, so being able to perform huge combos is essential to your survival, and this game gets bloody wild. If you're familiar with how roguelikes work, then the concept will come really naturally to you. There's an endless mode where you can go for as long as you can, but there's also the more traditional mode where you fight your way through waves of monsters that get progressively harder until you reach the final boss. Now, the way the game works is very simple, but there is a definite skill gap that becomes apparent pretty quickly, especially if you're someone like me that hasn't played a Tony Hawk game since you were a kid. The only skateboarding games I've played in recent years are Skate 3 and Skater XL, where you'd use a combination of both of your analog sticks to perform different tricks. Whereas with MOTORDOOM, much like the Tony Hawk games, you use square to perform flip tricks, circles for grab, triangle for grinds, and quickly pressing up and down will perform a manual. Like I said, all of that sounds pretty simple, but trying to string together a huge combo whilst also dodging and fighting off huge swarms of monsters is pretty difficult even in this very early stages of development where we don't have access to the different gear, upgrades, weapons, and maps. There are a couple accessibility controls you can turn on in the options which can help you out a little bit. There's an aim assist option which I do recommend you turn on because this game is designed to be played with a controller, and trying to aim whilst mid-air trying to do a trick can become pretty clunky in my opinion, and I also like to turn on auto drive so I don't have to worry about holding down the accelerator, but that's entirely up to you. I can't talk about this game too much more because, like I said, this is in the very early stages of development, but overall I see a lot of potential in this game. I'm super excited to see if the developer recreates other classic Tony Hawk levels, what other abilities and guns we can unlock, different motorbikes, and what other monsters and bosses we have in store for us. MOTORDOOM is for people that love the roguelike style genre, and it's definitely a game that I'll play when I just want to chill out and unwind. So head on over to Steam to check this funky little game out. You'll have a lot of fun, I promise.
brace yourselves and think of your loved ones. Thank you for choosing Aurora 5. We apologize if you do not survive the voyage.
Next on the list, we have one of my most anticipated games called Retro Space. And the reason why I'm so excited for this title is because it's going down the road of the more narrative-driven immersive sim route compared to most retro-styled shooters these days that choose to go down the fast-paced, action-driven road. As much as I love those chaotic boomer shooters, a part of me craves an immersive sim renaissance. And with games like this and Sulaco coming out, I think we might just be in store for that. Retro Space takes you on a dark, comedic, self-aware and immersive story set inside a space station that has been swallowed by a black hole, where mutants now roam the corridors of the place you once called your home, and everything around you appears to have gone mad. You play as a simple janitor, but now it's up to you to save humanity or to save yourself. The choice is yours. Taking a look at the aesthetic and overall tone of Retro Space, you can easily tell that it's heavily influenced by popular media such as Bioshock, System Shock, The Thing, Prey, and quite obviously Dead Space. And I love every part of that. The one thing that initially drew me to this game was its space punk aesthetic and the way the gameplay and atmosphere helped make the world feel alive. It helps make the world feel like a character in the game, or even an extension of the player in some sense. And that's what I adore about immersive sims, their ability to immerse you in their world and characters. I'll be keeping a very close eye on this one, so make sure to keep an eye on it with me. This non-stop, action-packed, fast-paced indie first-person shooter is the only game to give me extreme anxiety and large amounts of dopamine at the same time, because if you touch the ground, it's all over. MEATGRINDER is an indie first-person shooter currently being developed by one person, and it's what you'd get if you mixed Cluster Truck with Duke Nukem, with probably also a sprinkle of Serious Sam. And it's one of the most extreme experiences you'll ever have because the game doesn't give you any time to take a breath. There's a demo available on Steam for a limited time, so make sure to head over there and wishlist it so you know when it releases. Okay. So your goal in MEATGRINDER is to continuously move forward by jumping from vehicle to vehicle, whilst also avoiding the ground. The damage the ground causes will depend on your difficulty setting, but if you want the true heart-pounding experience, I recommend playing on hard, which will cause you to instantly die when you touch the ground. Now that would be relatively easy if you're someone that's accustomed to games like Cluster Truck and if you're experienced in platforming games, but when you add in the relentless bikers that constantly put pressure on you by jumping in your face with melee weapons and firing at you from ranges with guns, the game starts to get increasingly more difficult, and even though you're mostly outside in wide open spaces, the pressure this game puts you in almost makes you feel claustrophobic, and that's where I get the most fun out of this game. That pressure makes you learn the mechanics of the game faster by constantly putting you in intense situations where you'll need to aim fast, utilize your kick in close quarters to knock the dudes off, make use of your grapple hook and dash mechanic to reach other vehicles and dodge enemy projectiles. And the real kicker of this game is that you need to constantly be doing something to keep your heart rate up if you want to heal or refill your slow motion mechanic. That alone is the game telling you that you need to keep on your toes and don't think you can sit still on the back of a car picking people off for too long. That's how you die. Obviously, because it's a demo, we're very limited on the amount of content available, but I expect to see a bigger arsenal of weapons, different biomes, different enemies, different vehicles, and more intense platforming, as well as a bunch of other cool stuff that's hinted at the end of the demo. And lastly, we have a game that I was just made aware of not long ago called Shady Knight. Shady Knight is a first-person melee action game that is packed to the brim of fully dynamic fights that encourage the player to experiment with their own creativity by allowing them to perform stylish combos that consist of kicking enemies into spikes, setting them on fire, jumping on their heads, nailing them to walls with swords and arrows, grapple combo them with your chain, weapon throwing, slide boosting, yada yada yada. There is a lot of mechanical depth and player creativity in this game that I can't even begin to explain it in full detail, and this is only the demo at the moment. You might look at this game at first glance and write it off as just another movement shooter, but I assure you that it's anything but that. I am being 100% honest when I say that this game has some of the most smoothest and most responsive mechanics and systems I've ever felt in a video game, and there are only a handful of games that can match up to it in that sense. So your goal in Shady Knight is to enter these arenas and try to finish them as fast and as stylish as you can. Now you can just speedrun them entirely without killing anyone by mastering the mechanics and essentially abusing them, which is incredibly impressive, don't get me wrong, and I can't wait to see some of the speedruns people do, but where I personally get the most fun out of games like this is I love to try and complete them in style, or in a style I enjoy, I guess I should say. I try to find what mechanics I love to use, and I use them to take out the enemies in a satisfying and stylish way. I might finish the level with a subpar score, but as long as I feel like I've had fun, I really don't care, and luckily with how satisfying and responsive every little thing is in this game, I have never had a problem with not being satisfied. Just take a look at the camera work as I bounce around and move everywhere. Look at how fluid and stable it is despite me zipping around like a madman. Normally I'm one to turn off camera shake and all that nauseating shit, but for some reason this game nails it and I can't quite pinpoint how, but I've never felt sick or dizzy, and that's just great game design in my opinion. Anyway, Shady Knight is for people that love games like Ghost Runner and War Strider challenges, where the game will test your timing, accuracy, creativity, and mechanical proficiency. You can head on over to Steam right now and play the demo. So that wraps up another episode of Indie FPS You Need to Play, and I still have plenty more to come. If you're still here, then you're doing the most in helping this video be seen, and I appreciate the hell out of you. Stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see you then.